Welcome back to episode 8 of NuWho Review. I am Farrar, and I have with me my regular cohort, Lewis.
Hello.
And a new cohort to the show, Mr. Chris Lennox.
Hey guys, glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And, well, I guess there wasn't a whole lot to this episode, Mummy on the Orient Express by Jamie Matheson.
There was a lot of little details and a lot of little jokes, and I thought a self-conscious callback to a lot of classic episode setups, so that was fun.
Well, the first thing I noticed, speaking of callbacks, was the string tie that Capaldi was wearing in that episode, which reminded me very much of a lot of Hartnell's first few outfits. Capaldi seems to have not a costume, but a style.
Yeah.
And I'm really liking that. They're giving him a lot more variety. David Tennant had 2 suits.
I'm sure Colin Baker's mad with envy.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
I'm Clara. This is the doctor.
Ah, another one.
Sorry? Another what?
Well, we've got doctors and professors coming out of our ears on this trip.
I thought as far as this episode went, it skimped a little on the horror for me. I think we saw a little bit too much of the mummy too soon. I wouldn't have had the perspective shot right away for the whole 66 seconds.
Oh, with the timer. Yeah.
Yeah, because by the time we got to the 4th victim, we'd seen a lot of mummy at that point.
Well, you said in a little mythology.
I know a lot. Because from time to time, it turns out to be true.
What's that? What? What is that? But that's the great appeal, isn't it? Earth legends are such dry, dusty affairs and always fiction. But up here, in the stars, anything's possible. That's why I chose this field, to be honest. Hoping one day I might meet a real monster.
Well, there were a lot of silent scientists in this episode.
Yeah, it's been ages since we've seen a room full of scientists, you know?
But I liked the fact that they had basically body doubles for Albert Einstein.
Professor Kettlewell.
And Professor Kettlewell from
Robot.
I thought that was great.
I loved it. And they didn't have any other ones, did they? Like Rubish from Time Warrior or anything like that?
That's just what I was wondering. I was wondering if there were more that I missed, that I haven't seen recently.
Or what's his name from City of Death? That would have been fun. I mean, there's no telling. They might have stuffed it full of detail, and I just didn't even notice.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of just silly little callbacks. I guess the best of which, the one everybody noticed, was the Jelly Baby
in the cigarette case.
Case.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Classic.
Yeah. Without even having to say, "Would you like a Jelly Baby?" He just totally threw it across.
Well, because if you were on the Orient Express in the 1920s or 30s or whatever it was, if you were of that class, you know, all you do is you just hand.
Right.
You show the case, you open it up, and you don't even say it. Having watched all of these old Agatha Christie mysteries, I definitely recognized that gesture. And this episode really had an Agatha Christie feel to it for me. I mean, not only because it was on the Orient Express, but because you have a bunch of people in a room who have to figure out why they've been picked off one by one.
Right.
That, to me, is a real Christie trope. And I think it came off a lot better than their previous Agatha Christie episode, The Unicorn and the Wasp.
Right. Didn't Unicorn and the Wasp have Agatha Christie in the episode?
Yeah.
It never amounted to anything.
I think that episode was meant to play more along the lines of the nostalgia and the mystery of Agatha Christie's missing years.
Yeah.
That is probably a lot better known in England than it is here in the U.S. Speaking of Wasp, casting for all of the passengers on the Orient Express was pretty good. I mean, the costumes, the makeup, the clientele, very upper class, early 20th century English, except for the obvious joke where the doctor said, precise down to the detail, and then you have a guy with a giant steampunk monocle on, walking right by.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously this was steampunk. This was this was no more a real Orient Express ride than Douglas Adams' Titanic in space was.
Or Doctor Who's Titanic in space was.
Right. Well, yeah, they ripped that off, and we had a very Douglas Adams-esque computer lording over the whole proceedings.
That was actually one of the things I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the fact that they had a computer that was acting like a real jerk of a human.
Yeah.
That, to me, smacks of Hitchhiker's Guide, you know, where they they engage the backup computer, and the computer starts, I'm not letting anyone out until you have your coats on.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting, and I'm not sure if they did this for the purposes of character painting, and I will have to go back and watch the episode again to confirm this, but it seemed to me like when we were looking at Clara, we were looking at a steady camera that had been on a tripod or a dolly or something like that. And when we were looking at the doctor, it was almost always handheld shaky cam footage. Are they trying to tell us that Clara is the stable one now and the doctor is the unstable one?
Yeah, pretty cool.
I noticed it because of the lack of shaky cam during the scenes with Clara and Maisie in the
sarcophagus room.
Yeah, because when they went back and forth from her to the doctor, I noticed the shaky cam, and I thought, well, yeah, of course, they're on a train. This is the perfect time to use shaky cam. Mm-hmm. All the rest is just done with sound.
Right.
But the lack of it in those scenes brought it to my attention, and I wondered if they were trying to add that to her portrayal of the character.
I just thought that this would be a good one, too.
To end it. Yeah. It is. It's a good choice. Good one to end on.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the writers decided to take the audience for a ride in the last 2 episodes that went absolutely nowhere with Clara and the doctor's relationship to each other.
Yeah, you know, actually I felt a little bit insulted by that, but the other possible explanation here is that this episode was just inserted into the continuity, having not really been written to reflect it, and there was nothing else they could do. But just shove it in there and have a tossed-off line of explanation. Oh, I've changed my mind. You know?
Yeah.
It really felt like a smack in the face when we first started watching. And then they finally addressed it. You know, but she seemed pretty resolute last episode, so, yeah, that was ridiculous.
Most of it was resolved off-screen, and then they ended up telling us that Clara's an adventure junkie, which I think we already knew.
Right.
Yeah, I think we'd gathered that.
I mean, in previous Doctor Who's, you know, there was the companion who was trapped on the TARDIS because they stumbled in and accidentally left Earth, and the Doctor couldn't get him back. But now they go by choice. And what other reason would you go and risk your life every week but for the thrill? I mean, why else do people go skydiving? You know, it's thrill-seeking on a different level.
Right.
The fact that she brings up addiction, she's asking him about it, but really it's reflecting, you can tell from the way Jenna Coleman plays it that she's actually talking about herself. Is it like an addiction, she says, with doubt in her voice. Yeah, she's an adventure junkie. I think we pretty much clocked that already. And the scene with them resolving it, just kind of offhand, oh, well, it's our last hurrah. No, it's not. That just seemed to cheapen the whole melodrama of the previous episode.
Yeah, I really thought they were going somewhere. But oh well.
Even in the previous one, I felt like Clara's reversal, you know, she was furious with the Doctor and, you know, absolutely was not going to, you know, travel with him anymore. And then she just flips. You know, she's on the phone with Danny, and it seemed like to me, like in the course of 30 seconds, she, you know, reversed this huge life-changing decision she had made. It felt kind of clumsy to me.
Yeah, they had built that up over 2 episodes, and then they just threw it away.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, it might simply be that this episode was written out of context, and they had to stick it somewhere in the season.
That wouldn't surprise me. There's a lack of other arc content in this episode.
Right, and well, it doesn't say
there's no Missy in it.
By
Stephen Moffat didn't co-write it.
Right, yeah, his name was not in the byline.
After watching it, I had to wonder about the Missy thing. You know, she's been noticeably absent from the past several episodes, and I wonder if she won't be tied back into this episode later on at some point. The computer, you know, Gus.
Yeah, that's true. And we haven't seen her in the past couple of episodes, so they've kind of let that lie for the moment. And once again, I'm sure they're going to pick it up because they've got an episode dedicated toward it at the end of the season.
I wonder, too, because the mummy, you know, they said it was a soldier. And,
right.
Well, where did it come from?
Right.
Where, you know?
Yeah, is that going to tie to anything, or is it just a MacGuffin?
I'm thinking it's a MacGuffin for now, but they may end up writing it later because it was so vaguely done.
Yeah.
And the writing on the mummy itself and also on the flag looked like somebody had basically taken old cuneiform and stylized it for the purpose of the episode, which meant that it could be Earth origin, or it could just be they picked it because it looked alien enough. And I don't know, there are some people going, well, you know, Danny was a soldier, so maybe it's Danny.
No, that's really far-fetched.
I doubt that. I mean, I'd much rather believe it's Rory. I mean, he's the immortal one. He's the llast centurion, right?
Oh, God, that would have been a laugh if they had pulled off the bandages and found Rory.
That would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
Rory Pond.
Yeah. We didn't get a whole lot of backstory into the mummy itself. They simply called it the Foretold.
Right.
And like any good classic Doctor Who story, everybody who was in the episode already knew what it was.
Right. But was it the Foretold? I mean, that was this ancient prophecy or legend or something that they were all sort of keying into. But is that really what was going on? I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so either.
How far into the future was this? I mean, if it's ancient and we're in the 58th century,
it's impossible
then ancient
to tell.
could be the 50th century.
I mean, they were using iPads and standard LCD flat screen monitors everywhere, so it's impossible to tell.
Yeah, they keep repurposing like real world tech in Doctor Who and throwing lights on it. In Time Heist, the guy stuck a USB cable on the wall and it projected an image.
Yeah, that was
They just
ridiculous.
put a couple of blue LEDs in it, and it was
they don't
alien
even try,
tech.
but I mean, you go back far enough, and you'll have an alien planet with some 70s-looking Honeywell tape drive, you know, sitting there in a cabinet. So who the hell knows? It's an old tradition, I guess.
At a certain point, I'm thinking that Doctor Who's going to go to some nuclear launch site, and everything's going to be on 8-inch floppy disks.
Right.
You know,
I would
256 bits per side.
Honestly, I would respect the hell out of them for pulling up old tech like that. They haven't done that in a while.
No, but the bit of alien tech, which, by the way, Red Dwarf fans, I thought that was hilarious, talking about hard light holograms, but there was no light bee buzzing around inside them like there was in Red Dwarf.
Okay.
But inside the mummy was something which to me resembled the light bee from Red Dwarf, the slightly cylindrical thing with the light on the end in a sort of cone. I wondered if they had borrowed that. And then I realized a long time ago I was looking on eBay for cheap dash cameras for my car. Mm-hmm. It looks exactly like one of those cheap made-in-China dash cams with the screen closed and the camera replaced with a big green LED.
Yeah, probably so.
And they just hung a bunch of goop from it, and I thought, that's perfect. And they spent all of like $30 on that.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, classic BBC prop making there.
Yeah. I'm thinking what some folks around here were talking about with Katrina, which was the 9th anniversary is all about the 10th anniversary. It's 2014. They've got to be thinking about what they're going to do next year. I mean, the BBC has to be thinking of, it's 10 years since we rebooted the series. What are we going to do?
I wonder.
And I'm hoping Capaldi is the doctor that's going to get that episode, the 10th anniversary episode.
Great. I hope also that they take the opportunity to get some of the older actors back, too.
That would be nice.
You know?
Tom Baker is 80 years old and doing well.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I saw recently that he's making a convention appearance.
That's amazing. He didn't used to be so into it.
Well, he's only going as far as Brighton. So, unfortunately, us American fans are just out of luck.
Well, considering his attitude a few years ago, you know, he's really changed.
Even as recent as 10 years ago, he still didn't want to participate or talk about it. We're lucky that he managed to participate in Big Finish with Mary Tam before she got too ill to participate.
Oh, yeah.
We got a whole season of Romana 1 adventures. And he seems to be on board for another season, I think.
Well, not to mention that fun cameo in the 50th episode.
Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting about that cameo, by the way, was he was instantly recognizable off camera.
Yes, he got the voice back just for that one line.
But when he was on camera, he was old again.
Yes.
And I thought, what a clever little bit of direction to have people go for 3 seconds And then,
Right.
oh, but he's not the Doctor this time.
Or is he?
No, he's just a character. We don't know we don't know who he is.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people insinuating, oh, well, could he be the Doctor winding down his final regeneration in an old, familiar self? Anything's possible.
I don't know. Tom Baker said that he would much rather play the Master if he comes back.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So he could have been an older incarnation of the Master at that point.
Anything's possible.
Yeah. If the Master is Missy, then I guess it's not Tom Baker, because they're going to have to gender swap again.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's Tom Baker at all. In fact, I thought they had casted a younger guy as the Master for later on this season, but I haven't heard much about it lately, so we'll find out in a couple of weeks, won't we?
Good morning, everyone. Around the room, you will find a variety of scientific equipment. Your goal is to ascertain the foretold's true nature.
If everybody on the train had been handpicked to try to solve this mystery, then what was
Why
the old
were
lady?
Maisie and her grandmother there?
Right.
Right.
What were they good for?
A lot of people have been asking that question, and a lot of people have been trying to answer it, and I haven't seen a good answer yet.
Yeah.
People are just shrugging their shoulders collectively on that one.
Yeah, I hope it's not just, because of the plot or what it seemed to be.
I honestly think that's the only reason they were there.
Oh, well.
The reason they were there was to give the audience an in.
Yeah.
And to give Clara somebody to talk to and confide in for no real reason, except that they kind of had something in common with their...
Pity, though. I mean, they could have made her an expert on something.
It would have been interesting if, for example, among the scientists, they had decided to hedge their bets, and the old lady was like the top psychic in her field,
right,
or clairvoyant or something like that, and said she could commune with the dead. Well, if you really are having people who are getting killed one by one, if you have somebody who says that they can commune with the dead, let's bring her aboard and maybe she can do her magic.
I hate to bring this up even, but I'm almost shocked that nobody's screaming about the lack of female scientists.
Well, that was what I brought up with the diversity thing.
Yeah.
Lack of female scientists, lack of not white scientists.
Just a room full of stereotypes that could have walked out of a John Pertwee episode.
Right.
They really haven't gone back to the classic writers.
No.
Which is a great pity, I think.
I wonder if they were trying to avoid what happened on like the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh.
Where a lot of people were complaining that it was basically old ideas from the 60s rehashed in the 80s.
Right.
And they pointed the finger at the fact that Gene Roddenberry hired a lot of the old crew, people that he had worked with in the 60s. I wonder if that was a conscious decision in 2005 to say, we're not going to have old Who crew or writers on these episodes because we don't want to make the mistake of disappointing the fans, of saying that it's not so much a reboot as a rehash.
True, although they did make a big deal about rehiring one of the best original Who directors, Graham Harper.
That's true.
And he's done, I think, 3 or 4 episodes by this point.
How many scripts has Jamie Matheson done, by the way, for
None.
Doctor Who?
By the way, this was his first
This
Doctor
is his
Who.
first. Okay.
Yeah. He had written on Being Human before this. And like I said, he's got next week's episode as well. So
we've got 2 episodes in a row by writers who are new to Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like
Kill the
when Chris
Moon and this
Boucher
one.
wrote Robots of Death and Face of Evil.
There's a trend in Doctor Who, which is, writers come in and then maybe their first couple episodes are a little shaky, but by the time they get to 3 or 4, they really know their stuff.
Hitting their stride.
And so I would say this was a pretty promising first outing for Jamie Matheson, not having written Doctor Who before.
Indeed, yeah.
Especially considering last week's episode. I would say that this episode was... I think I enjoyed this episode a little more than last week's episode.
Yeah.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, it was
By
fun.
far.
Yeah.
Kill the Moon to me was disappointing in many areas, but
Kill the Moon was
the story just didn't hold together for me.
No, the story didn't hold together at all. It was like complete suspension of disbelief material, but it was good character material. It really threw the characters into conflict with one another in a way that I've never seen.
Yeah.
So I think it accomplished its purpose. And Doctor Who can get away with anything.
Yeah, well, it's a fantasy show. It's not really a science fiction show. Of course, if you have a fantasy in space in the future, people are immediately going to call it science fiction. But it's really a fantasy adventure show.
Well,
it's horror, fantasy, adventure.
Right.
I'm sorry. I know that must have been distressing for you. But if you are disobedient again, I will decompress another area containing less valuable passengers.
I'm beginning to feel old now because the writers on Doctor Who are younger than I am. Yeah. People in their late 20s and early 30s. But, you know, it's kind of a good thing to have somebody who's relatively inexperienced because they've got something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
True, yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I was trying to bring up. You know, it's not somebody trying to retread past glories. It's somebody trying to blaze a new trail.
Right.
And that's what we need.
And, again, to bring back Star Trek II,
yeah.
You had Nick Meyer and James Horner.
Right.
James Horner, who was a young buck, really eager to make his mark. And he had written a great score for Krull, which kind of went nowhere.
Right.
And he had the opportunity to do another great score using a lot of the same techniques that he had used in the late 70s. This being the early 80s, a lot of people hadn't heard his work yet, so he went at it 100%, and we got a modern classic.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and if you look at the biog, what's it called, An Adventure in Space and Time, you know, you see that Doctor Who was started by young bucks with really nothing to lose and a lot to prove.
Right.
And it's been the tradition ever since.
So what do we think about the trailer for the next episode?
Oh, it looks great.
Flatline.
Mm-hmm. I think the sale of toy TARDISes is going to skyrocket.
By the way, since we're talking about the next episode, Clara apparently gets her hands on the Doctor's sonic screwdriver.
Okay.
And that is not a metaphor. In the trailer, I actually saw her using the sonic screwdriver. It's really new school sonic screwdriver. Like, Clara's using it like Harry Potter's magic wand.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
one of the problems I have with the modern use of the sonic screwdriver.
Well, right, it's becoming...
It's not a tool now.
It's becoming a plot device, the same... Right, it does anything you want it to.
It's a magic wand now.
Right. They're right, though. I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't have that on him. The problem is when the writers start getting carried away with what it can do.
Well, I mean, it projects images now.
Yeah.
I saw that in the last episode.
It's also
that was
a
first.
tricorder.
Yeah, he apparently can take readings and read a screen on the sonic screwdriver, which is not there and would be so tiny that maybe only Time Lord eyes can read that tiny of a screen.
Yeah, it must be.
Prop building fans are going to have a heck of a time getting the sonic screwdriver right now.
At least the psychic paper has not been abused to doing things that it can't do.
True, and it didn't work this time, which I thought was great.
Yeah, I definitely got to talk a lot about.
The mystery shopper thing was fantastic.
Really? That's it.
The Doctor was so disappointed when all he turned out to be was a mystery shopper.
That's the thing. You know, even when the plot fails us, the humor gets you by.
Yeah.
Right.
The humor has been great all season long.
Yeah, and there were a lot of things I didn't like about this episode. Like, did we really need a countdown timer? I mean, is this Top Chef?
Yeah.
You know, but the rest of the action grabbed my attention, and
yeah, and that,
it
didn't
really
was a cute
irritate
little
me.
device to ratchet up the tension for the younger viewers, and it worked. You know, I mean, it's obvious we're never going to do that again, so why not?
I do appreciate it for one reason, and that is that they did not use the classic "someone's going to die" thing of
the heartbeat thing.
God, if they had done that, that would have just been so over the top and so done, you know. So I actually like I like the fact that it was 66 seconds. I didn't really need the countdown timer on screen, but the fact that they didn't go with the sucking of the sound out and the heartbeat, just like we've done in a billion horror films and television shows, I actually appreciate that they didn't lower it to that level for us, the audience.
Dodge the cliches.
Right.
Yeah.
Doctor Who is many things, including over the top and cliche, but I think this time they actually erred on the side of taste.
Well, they will try anything once.
Right.
You know, they really will. But they don't go to the same trough very often. And this season, it's been very, very interesting seeing them explore tropes that never have really been brought up, you know?
Yeah. Well, this was yet another cyborg episode, though, because we had a soldier that had been repaired with alien technology.
Right, so maybe we'll see him pop up in Missy's Heaven.
Maybe so. Although, could he pop up without the thing that the Doctor kept?
Yeah, I don't know.
The rest of him crumbled into ashes, and we were left with the GPS with the seaweed hanging from it. Whatever it was. Well, thanks again, Louis, for joining us once again post-sickness.
Glad to be back.
And Chris for joining us for the first and probably not the last time.
I'd be happy to be back. Thank you.
Right. And we'll see you next week.